Alrighty. Perfect. Alrighty. Okay. Hello. It seems like everything is good and dandy in working order. Good stuff. Okay. Da-da-da. Alrighty. How would I go about adding this to window capture? Yeah, window capture. Zoop. Okay. Hello, helping hand. Hello. How is it going? Just getting a few things all situated all here. Good and dandy. Looking at some things. I need to blow that thing up way more. There we go. Yeah. I'll have that on the background if need be. Okay. Hello. Let me, now that I know for a fact the stream is up and working, let me go ahead and try to wrestle some people in. Live stream, promo. Pro DM answers your questions live. It's going fine. Well, you know what? Fine is better than not fine. So that's good. It could be going not fine. Where else? Some promo. Where else? Promotion. Okay. Alrighty. So, For those of you tuning in, I'm sure y'all have heard the terrible turmoil that is going on in the D&D world, in the OGL, the Open Game License. Because a long time ago, when D&D was created by TSR, they sued the bejesus out of anybody and everybody who dared step in their presence. And then Wizards of the Coast came around and got D&D, and they created the Open Game License and allowed everyone to create games based off of them. And it was a good time. It was thriving. And then 4th edition came around, and 4th edition's OGL sucked. And it was dark times, and everyone went on to play Pathfinder instead. And then 5th edition's OGL blew up, and it was awesome once again. But now it's like a trend. With 3rd edition, OGL good, 4th edition bad, 5th edition, OGL good, and air quote 6th edition here, 1D&D. The OGL is turning up to be bad. And this is causing a lot of content creators, whether they be YouTubers or, just writers, authors, artists, any number of things. When it comes to creating D&D content, a lot of people are not liking what's shaping up in the OGL right now. Because you got to give up, certain licenses. If you run a Kickstarter, you got to give, Wizards of the Coast some of your money. Whole bunch of terrible things, and it's not a great time. And it's making a lot of people question their future with creating D&D content, because it is essentially, a lot of people are making their jobs, their careers essentially out of making content, and now all of a sudden they're going to get their pay cut. And that's not good. So we will certainly see what's going on. I've already talked to several of my fellow D&D YouTubers, and they've already talked about, not publishing certain videos about D&D or Wizards of the Coast. And when it comes to creating content, they're going to change the way that they make their content now, because instead of making it purely for, using the Open Game License instead, they're going to be doing other things. And that's not good. That would be not good for the hobby. As we saw with 4th edition, 4th edition was a dark ages for D&D, because a lot of people still played for 3rd edition. A lot of people moved on to Pathfinder. Admittedly, there was a lot of people that did play 4th edition, as the numbers show. 4th edition sold a lot. But even still, 4th edition is not well regarded as compared to Pathfinder. And I fear that if they continue to go down the route that they're going, the community may split again. Which is honestly, I don't actually fear that. I kind of just say that as a turn of phrase. I actually do not fear D&D being split again, because I think it's a genuinely good thing for the tabletop role-playing game hobby to not be monopolized. I think it is a genuinely good thing that people try different game systems instead of just all latching on to the same one game system. Because, unfortunately, what ends up happening is, if what we have right now, I wouldn't say exactly what this is, but when you have the monolithic D&D 5th edition being the just go-to, then unfortunately what ends up happening is, the majority of people are playing it, and if you want to play something else, then you get a bunch of people who don't like it. And also, very, very importantly, is if you want to get someone new into the hobby and they just happen to not like 5th edition, then they'll look around and be like, oh, well, this is the big one and I don't like it, so I'm not going to get into the hobby. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that the plot, the monolith that is 5th edition is unfortunately crowding the sphere. So maybe this OGL fiasco that's going on right now could be a good thing for the hobby as a whole. It could be healthy. The revelations of the legal and judicial systems here could be good. We'll figure out, in a few months' time, when all the lawyers get done duking it out, we're going to figure out what you are and are not allowed to use for content, how you can and cannot make money off of a tabletop role-playing game. It'll be interesting to see. And I'm looking forward to that. But as of right now, a lot of it is speculation. As of right now, there is a lot of legal and judicial stuff that goes way over my head, and I imagine the heads over non-legal ease people. I know that there's been a bunch of YouTubers that have had lawyers come on, and some YouTubers are lawyers themselves, and they've reviewed this thing, and there's differing opinions. So I couldn't honestly tell you exactly what exactly is going on right now, but here's hoping we'll figure out soon. Here's hoping. So that is going to, the whole OGL thing is going to be, I imagine, just dominating the D&D blogosphere for the next coming weeks. I imagine everyone's going to be tweeting about it and making videos about it and post about it as they are right now. Like, all of my fellow YouTubers have been doing that. I haven't made any post about it because I genuinely haven't looked full into it. I probably will not look into it either. I'll leave that for people that are far more interested in the legal side of things. But what will end up essentially happening is I probably will be looking to make videos and content about things other than D&D because I enjoy it. I enjoy more things than just D&D. And actually, as of recent, one of my biggest videos on YouTube in the past several little while is actually I've gotten a bunch of old school videos. A bunch of my old school videos have actually been getting a lot of views, and I think that is probably due to a number of things. I think that's due to one, the Old School Essentials Kickstarter just got fulfilled, so a bunch of people just got their books. Two, I think that there is some other YouTubers promoting old school play. And three, and also very importantly, is I think that there is sometimes people burn out on their biggest tabletop role playing game. And I know for a fact that 5th edition burnout has been hitting some people. So I definitely see that. I definitely talk to a lot of people who say, I've been playing this one tabletop role-playing game system for, so long. Some people have been playing 5e from the beginning, which is now going on to, 6 years? At this point? No, 5e's been around for longer than 6 years. It's been around for longer than that. So, I think it's important to see where the trends are going. I myself am not completely burnt out of 5th edition, but I do enjoy other game systems. I enjoy other things than just D&D 5th edition. And, I think it's important to, try other things out. But what about you all, fair viewers? What do you all think? How do you all feel about the OGL right now? How do you feel about D&D's future in regards of 5th edition and 1 D&D, which is essentially 5.5, let's be honest here. How do you all feel about that? I am genuinely curious. I think it's very important to discuss these things because as much as the company tries to make the game their own, we are the ones that make the game what it is. So, it's important to discuss these things. Also, Dungeon 23 is something that was kicking up recently in the D&D YouTuber sphere. And I saw there was a bunch of videos about it, and people were getting a ton of views on those videos. And then I make a post about it. Hey, like, who's doing Dungeon 23? And an overwhelming number of people responded, what is Dungeon 23? So that's very interesting. I'm wondering, like why, how the other people didn't know about that. Very weird. I, for one, am concerned about the future health of the hobby. In what way? I'm actually curious. Mr. House DM. House DM, for other viewers and listeners, House DM is an up and coming, and by up and coming, I mean already significantly successful D&D YouTuber. What's next for NFA? Anything excited in the pipeline you looking forward to? So, me personally, I'm working on several things. So I just recently did a seasonal job, which put me ahead of my little schedule, so I can work on some other things. So I'm working on my writing materials. I am working on a reverse Mega Dungeon hex crawl. I am working on a Beauty and the Beast Mega Dungeon adventure. I am working on a little mini book of hex crawls. I'm working on a mini book of layers, and I just recently got contacted to do a writing gig for something, but but what's funny is the writing gig involves a 5e adventure module, and so I don't know. I need to contact the person who sent this. But I'm wondering if, with all the OGL news that's going on right now, I'm wondering if he's gonna be like, actually no, I don't want to do that anymore. So we'll have to see. So that's in regards of like my writing that I'm going to be doing. But other than that, when it comes to my videos, I've got a few videos I've got kind of like that I want to make. I was originally going to be doing DM guides on several of the 5e adventure modules, but now with this whole OGL thing, I might kind of like take a little dip on the side. What I mean is the potential revocation of the OGL could harm creators and future creators who have contributed so much good to this hobby. Disincentivizing future creation is bad for the hobby, in my honest opinion. So, it's funny you mentioned that the hobby, because that implies that D&D is the hobby, right? Like you are implying that the D&D is the end all be all, which honestly, the majority of people would honestly say yes, that is. But I, being optimistic, very uncharacteristic like of someone named No Phone Allowed, being optimistic here, what I think is if D&D dies, the rest of the tabletop role-playing game hobby thrives. That's what I think, right? Like if some way, somehow, Wizards of the Coast decides to just throw D&D into the gutter, which, let's be honest, with this current OGL and how people are reacting, that's the way it's going. If that is the case, then people are going to move on to other tabletop role-playing game systems, and I promise you, those other tabletop role-playing game systems are going to see the clown fiasco that is going on with D&D and say to themselves, we're going to create our own open game license that's cool. Kleenex is tissue, Band-Aid is bandage. Exactly right. So like whenever we see the analogous D&D, it is usually very much so reflective of the tabletop role playing game sphere. Very analogous, I know, but that's only because one, D&D was the first, and or air quote first, air quote. I know that there's things here and there and everywhere. It's the analogous first tabletop role playing game, and it's been popularized by the media, but that could easily be taken over by something else, easily. I hope so. Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I genuinely do not see a world where D&D just goes down, and then all of a sudden, all the people that love playing tabletop role playing games say, "Oh, well, D&D's dead. I guess we don't play tabletop role playing games anymore." I don't see that. I do see, of course, some people saying that. I do. But on the other hand, I see a bunch of people saying, "Hey, D&D's dead. Let's play another tabletop role-playing game." And then they're going to find a tabletop role-playing game that fits their needs. Like if you're way more into combat, you're going to go to a combat-focused one. You're way more into role-play, you're going to go into a role-play-focused one. You're way more into math-heavy, you're going to go to one. You're way more into math-light, you go to another. Because unfortunately, as I mentioned in the beginning, but you may not have heard this, I genuinely think it's already unhealthy to have the monolithic D&D 5th edition being the majority of gaming. I think that's unhealthy. Because, it's just not a fun time for people that show up and don't like D&D 5e and then think themselves, "Oh, well, this is the only one." And it's also not fun if you want to play other systems and your players refuse because they want to play the big hotness. Like, I think having, like, if there was, like, genuinely, like, 10 tabletop role-playing games that were even in, like, media coverage and content creation and all that fun jazz, that would be great. Right? Like, if we had, like, Call of Cthulhu, D&D, like, some old school thing, so on and so forth. If we had, like, 10 tabletop role-playing games, and when you show up to the hobby, you can kind of bounce around until you find the right one, like, that would be cool. That's how it technically is right now. On paper, there's a ton of tabletop role-playing games, but for the most part, when you show up to the hobby, all you see is, you see 5e. And 5e just encompasses all the others and tries to shove them out the way. And because it's so big, all the content creators make content on it. And, like, it's so sad. I'm sure you know House DM. I'm sure you know good old No Nat Ones. He's a Pathfinder content creator. And he's doing actually relatively well for himself. And by relatively, he's doing better than both of you and I. But he's doing really good. And he's primarily a Pathfinder channel, right? He makes a bunch of Pathfinder content, whether that be actual legitimate advice, or he makes memes, or jokes, or skits, or whatever. And then, it was so sad. He put a bunch of effort into making a Call of Cthulhu video. Because he openly stated, "Hey, I like Call of Cthulhu, I want to make some videos on it." And guess what happened? He made a Call of Cthulhu video, and the views went on his channel. Because as a content creator, you're incentivized to go with the goods, and unfortunately, Call of Cthulhu isn't the goods. And that totally, basically, not only did that stop him from creating further Call of Cthulhu videos, but also very importantly is anybody watching that also got discouraged from making other videos. You can still submit comments in the Cleric survey. I filled my text blocks with my thoughts on the OGL. Well, I'll tell you this, Warren, and also hi, welcome, Warren. What I'll tell you is there is no conceivable way that Wizards of the Coast isn't seeing the fire that's being spread by everybody, whether that be from the surveys or far more importantly from the views, because all the YouTubers, all the D&D people are making videos and streaming talking about this OGL, and people are it's not a good time. I promise you already they're working. There's a PR person who's sitting there pulling his hair out at Wizards of the Coast, there's the heads of Wizards of the Coast are probably sitting there scrambling like, oh hey, how do we appease everyone but also make money off of the content creators when it comes to the OGL? Like they're trying to do this like counterbalance and weight thing. It's pretty funny. So yeah, it's pretty contentious time right now for the Dindas. But like I said, like I would be actually a-okay with D&D crumbling to the ground. I would be a-okay with it. I know that D&D is the legacy. I know that D&D is the staple. I know it's the name. I know it's the function. I know it's the design. I know it all too well. But I'd be okay with it. Because from the ashes of the burned and destroyed D&D, arising like a phoenix, we would get something new. And if that something new is good, then that'll be the new thing. And also, very importantly, is if it's something bad, then that thing will just burn down too. Until we finally get something good. It's yeah, it's very interesting to see because like a bunch of the D&D content creators are seriously like questioning their future because why would you continue supporting a company that doesn't really support you? Why would you bother putting time, money, and effort into projects when Wizard of the Coast doesn't care about your time and effort and just takes your money, right? It's very important questions to ask. So it'll be very interesting to see what we get in the future. But other than that all boring nonsense, I mean, like, what are you guys up to, right? Like, what are you guys got any questions of me about either running games or playing in games or just the hobby as a whole? Y'all got anything for me? I'm here to talk. I'm here to listen. I'm here to answer. I'm not here to doomsay. I very much so do not want to be a doomsayer. I very much so want to be someone that, just enjoys the conversation. I very much so want to be someone that helps people along in their hobbies and likes and needs. I want to be a paragon. I want to be a paragon of the role-playing game people. I'm not a paragon of the D&D, mind you, but of the tabletop role-playing game people as a whole. Hoo-wee. Oh, God, I worked out buys and tries yesterday. Or not yesterday, the day before. And, like, I'm still sore. Like, 2 days later, I'm still sore. Oh. Yesterday, I did, what'd I do? Yesterday, I did, like, core and a bit of legs. I did some squats. That was pretty fun. Squatting quite a lot now. I'm pretty happy with that. Hello Zone. I've been really enjoying your series of videos on Curse Draw. Do you have any advice on Session 0? Well, hello, Iceman. So, don't skip leg day. Never skip leg day. It's funny because, like, I definitely see a lot of people skip leg day. Like, I don't consider myself a gym rat, but I definitely, like, go to the gym frequently, and I go at specifically the same time. So I see the gym rats, right? Like, Like right now that it's January, we're getting an influx of people because we got a bunch of the New Year, New Me people. But yeah, I definitely see the gym rats, and I see the few gym rats who skip leg day because up top they're built, and then you look down, little chicken legs there. So yeah, I've been really enjoying your series. Do you have any advice on session 0? So here is my genuine advice. One, you tell them, hey, I want to run this game, right? Because something very important I see a lot of people DM is, when they're DMing, is they'll try to make a game and then say, hey, like anyone, you can do anything and this and that. And unfortunately, what can end up happening is if you allow the players to do whatever the heck they want, they can start transforming the game into something that you don't want to run, right? So first things first, tell them the game that you want to run, and if they agree to play in that game, then it's a good mesh. If you want to run a game and they don't want to play in it, that's a bad mesh. If they want to play a game that you don't want to run, that's a bad mesh. So you need to have the consensus there. You need to say, hey, I want to run this kind of game, and the players say, hey, we want to play in that kind of game. And boom, you get into that agreement. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to session 0, is you can do this publicly, but I preferably do this privately after the session 0. I would say, hey, if there is anything that you do not want in this game at all whatsoever, slide my DMs, let me know. Whether this be, child harm or so-and-so, XYZ. There's plenty of awesome session 0 charts you can find that detail that. Or you could just, ask them, hey, just tell me if there's anything that you absolutely do not want, just let me know. Boom. I typically don't do that in the open because I don't want people having to say things out loud or whatever in front of other people. So I would just announce that to everyone, say, hey, after the session, just let me know, or you just slide my DMs, whatever. So that's number 2. And number 3, when it comes to the session 0, my biggest one is you have the players coordinate. So what can end up happening a lot of times is people will be on different wavelengths. Like, for example, as Curse of Strahd, you may have the player that says, hey, I want to have the epic backstory where I'm the son of the deposed king and I want to reclaim my country. That's cool and all, but that's not going to work for this campaign because you're not going to be in your country. Then you have Beppo the Clown. This person says, hey, I want to be a clown with honking shoes, and whenever I take a step, it goes beep, 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 beep. It's going to kind of throw off the vibe and feel you're probably trying to make for your Curse Strahd game. So say, hey, I want I want your characters to be within this realm of believability. I want them all to, be able to mesh together. I want them all to be able to fit into this campaign that we are playing together, because if 2 people make characters that just aren't going to mesh well, it's not going to be good. And also, very importantly, is if people are going to make characters that are going to not mesh well against your campaign, it's also not going to be good. So, one, run the game you want to play. 2, have people slide in DMs for the things to avoid. And number 3, make the PCs together. And I know that I've played with these people, I've ran for these people. I know you'll get a ton of people who will say, no, I need to make my character by myself because it's going to be so cool when I expose it to everybody. It's never going to be cool. It never is. It doesn't matter if you got a 10-page backstory if we're going out to adventure somewhere where your backstory doesn't matter, right? Your 10-page backstory isn't going to matter when you're hanging out with Beppo the Clown. You know what I'm saying? Like, so make the characters together. Make sure that the characters can coordinate with each other. You make sure that it actually adds to the adventure, not takes away from the adventure. That's my overall thoughts on Session 0. Don't skip leg day. Yeah, don't skip leg day. I have a question. What is your attitude for a player that only wants to create homebrew characters even after being told that no homebrew is allowed? Very simple, right? Very simple. So if you tell someone no and they say but yes, then it's not going to work, right? If you say, hey, I'm running a game and we're only going to be using official content, so have at it, feel free to use all the official content, and then you get that person who says, no, I need to use this homebrew I found or I made. I need this. It's not going to work. Because, as I just mentioned with the Curse Strahd little thing there, you want to run this game. Player wants to play a game. But the player wants to play a different game than the one you want to run. It's not going to work. It's not, the ends don't connect. So, ultimately, the player either needs to find a game that facilitates the kind of game that they want to play, or they need to learn real quick that, they can't have everything. Because ultimately, you as a DM, you can't have everything either, right? Like, you have to make agreeances and you have to basically, I'm trying to think of the right word for this, but you have to come to an agreement to play a game, right? Like, you offer something, they offer something, and if they're not offering anything and they're only trying to just get what they want out of it, then it's not going to work out. It's not healthy. They aren't willing to compromise. So those are my thoughts on that. You don't want to turn into an upside down triangle. Hey, cutie. Hey. Warhammer Weekend Times. The biggest, and I do in fact mean the biggest, Total War Botet content creator of all of YouTube. The biggest. And you are absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest Botet YouTuber out there. How's it going, Mr. Stan? That's super helpful. How much do you tie your player characters into the story? I've had problems with having to postpone backstory focus sessions, but wonder how much Curse Strahd would be improved. So that is another problem with running an adventure. Or let me rephrase this here. I'm actually going to be making a video about this very topic. But there is a difference between running a story and running an adventure. Now, the adventure is about the adventurous people being adventurous, doing adventurous things. The story is about the heroes doing epic things as part of their story. These are two separate things, right? Now, my question to you is, are you running an adventure or are you running a story? Now, what I'll tell you is, if you want to incorporate the backstories and have those focus sessions and have those tying narratives together, you want a story. Now, if you don't need to focus on the characters' backstories, if you don't need to have those focus narratives, then you're running an adventure. Now, I'm willing to bet that you and your players, from what I can just gather from literally that one sentence, is it sounds like you're leaning more on the story side of the little tracker of, adventure here, story there. You're a little bit more on the story side of things. But ultimately, there is a problem in that you are running a adventure module that is ultimately an adventure. Because Curse of Strahd, natively, does not care about the player's backstories. As I mentioned with your previous question there, it doesn't matter if you're the son of the deposed king and you want to get your kingdom back. When you get thrown into the Curse of Strahd adventure, your backstory doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if, whatever your backstory is, it doesn't matter because you are playing an adventure. But ultimately, the problem and the friction here is if you want that narrative tie-in, you want the story. So what I'll say is, for the instance of Curse of Strahd, I wouldn't care. For the instance of Curse of Strahd, your backstory is next to irrelevant. Because the adventure of Curse of Strahd is an adventure. It's not a story. When you look at the other 5e adventure modules, some of them are a bit more inclined to stories, right? Some of them are a bit more inclined to being, oh, hey, this all takes place in the same city. Your backstory can be more easily incorporated. But in other adventures, oh, hey, you're going a million miles away and you're going into a deep, dense jungle or forest or whatever, or you're going deep underground, and thus your backstory of being the son of the deposed king, it's not going to matter at all. So, you got the adventures, you got the stories, but if you're in the middle, then you have to make some decisions there. Are we going to turn Curse of Strahd into a story? Are we going to forego the story and run the adventure? That's up to you. It's going good. Glad to see you're still going strong. I am. Thank you. I've been on a bit of a delay this past few months because I've been very busy with work and all that. But I will be getting back to it on the YouTube grind. I'll be coming out with hopefully weekly videos. Be doing a bunch of writing, doing a bunch of fun jazz. I feel like you've given me permission to not focus too much on my PC's backstory since I want to run an adventure more than a story. I feel relieved, appreciate it. Yeah, no problem. So for the instance of this, I would say choose whether you want to run the story, not the Sautry, the story, or the adventure. And ultimately, mind you, I've been DMing for a long time now, and I've struggled with that as well. There's been times where I've ran the adventure and I tried making it a story, and there's times where I ran the story and tried making it adventure. And thankfully now I feel like I'm a bit more confident in saying, hey, I'm going to run an adventure. We're running the adventure, and then other times I'll say, hey, I'm running the story. This is the story. Kind of going back to when it all started. When you first started DMing, how did you get over the jitters of running the campaign, or that worry? So, so how did I get over the jitters? So first things first, I did not run a campaign. The first things I ever started DMing was essentially a series of one-shots. And ultimately, they were kind of like it was kind of like a pick up and go kind of campaign where I said, hey, everybody in my little community, if you want to play in my game, you're part of a mercenary guild. And each session is a fun little one shot where you go off and do a quest. And one of the quests is you go save the kids from the bullywugs. Another quest is you go retrieve the egg, the whatever you call that thing, oh my gosh, what's the flying beak creature? Oh my gosh, the hippogriff's egg, or no, griffin's egg. Griffin's egg. Basically just a whole bunch of different one shots like that. Now the important thing is I sucked. When I first started riding a bike, I fell off. When I first started DMing, I sucked. That's just the nature of it. So I didn't have to worry about the jitters because I didn't care. because I sucked. I knew I sucked, but that's okay because it was a more beer and pretzels kind of game. But thankfully, through those series of little one-shots here and there and everywhere, I got the confidence. I started learning the rules. I started thinking more about, the allowing for, certain actions. I started doing things, and I got confident through that. And then, funnily enough, I've actually got several people here from my first campaign. One of which is Warhammer Weekend Times. He was part of one of my first campaigns, and we still talk about that campaign to this day. Because that one was an adventure, let me tell you. When I started running that campaign, that was an adventure, and I wasn't focused on the story, I was just focused on running the adventure, and it worked so well, because it was so organic. What really, really helped is, for me anyway, was not running a story, but running the adventure. Because I said, hey players, you're here now. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And then I reacted to it. And it was a great feedback loop. They did something dumb. I gave them something dumb to do. I gave them something dumb to do. They do something dumb. It was a great feedback loop. I loved it. We generated so many stories through the misadventures of those characters. And that got me to being a better DM. So overall, when I first started DMing, how did I get over the jitters of running the campaign or that worry? I didn't. I just ran a game, sucked for a while, and then eventually got less sucky. Oh. And that's just the bottom line of it. Whenever you try anything for the first time, it very, very rarely are you going to excel at it, right? The first time you drove a car, you probably weren't, driving a Formula One car in the Grand Prix. You know what I'm saying? The first time you insert XYZ. First time of anything, you probably weren't the best at it, but you eventually got better at it through trial and error. My trial and error was very solid because I was surrounded by supportive people, and sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes you want to run a game and then you get surrounded by people who aren't as forgiving, and that sucks. So surround yourself with people that want to see you improve and will reap the rewards of you improving. Hello, everyone. Hello, Lorianda. Hello. I remember that my friends want me to succeed and try to be transparent around what you need or unfamiliar with. Yeah. As I mentioned with the whole feedback loop thing of the DM and the players, right? There are some players out there who essentially just want the DM to bend over backwards for every little whim that they have. And that's not good. You're not going to learn anything from that. There are players out there who want to cultivate a fun environment and thus get the other players on board and encourage the DM to, create a fun environment. And it's a great feedback loop. It's impossible to tell literally right away if someone's going to be a good or bad player. It's impossible to tell right away if someone's going to be a good or bad DM. But you pick up these things over time. You're going to understand as a DM, oh, hey, this player is awesome, that player sucks. You'll learn that over time. But surrounding yourself with friends that want to see you succeed and become a better DM, that's awesome. Don't worry about jitters. Don't worry about quality. Also, don't bring two hardcore gamers to your first game. Just play with some noobs that you can learn the game with. So, the interesting thing there, Laurander mentions here, is play with some noobs. So, I can tell you that I would much rather, as a DM, I would much rather DM 4 players who have never touched a tabletop role playing game in their life versus 4 players who have been playing tabletop role playing games like all day, every day for years. And the reason for that is, yeah, there is the chance that the people that have been playing a long time are awesome, but there's also the chance that they have basically been cultivated in an environment that is very unhealthy. There is a chance. Versus new players, if you get new players, you can raise them up right. They're like children. You can raise them up right. What other tabletop role-playing game system would you recommend? The way things are going now, we'll need recommendations. Oh, yes, we will. I talked about that earlier, Duel. I talked about how the death of D&D may very well inspire other tabletop role-playing games to rise to prominence. Because, as I also mentioned, I think it's very unhealthy for the hobby already to be a monolithic view of, oh, hey, there's D&D 5th edition, and, like, nothing else. I think that's very unhealthy. So we need other tabletop role-playing game systems to, sojourn. We need to look at other things. Because it's very important that, like right now, the most people show up and they can play 5e, but some people want something different. Some people want something a bit grittier. Some people want, more mechanics heavy. Some people want more mechanics light. So, I actually already made a video on this subject, which I'll go and reiterate here. I might as well link it too while I'm here. So let me link that. Boom. There's the link to my top 10 tabletop role-playing games that aren't D&D. So, first things first, I'm going to go with Old School Essentials. Old School Essentials is essentially D&D's first edition. And I know a lot of people have heard a lot of things about D&D's first edition, but very few of the people who talk about that have actually seen it in function. It is simple, it is elegant, it is simplistic. And why I separate simple and simplistic is, simple is, hey, like I look at a class and a class takes up 2 pages and that's the end of story. And it's simplistic in design in that you don't look at the rules when you're playing the game a lot of the time. Because instead of worrying about skill checks and, balance and things of that nature, you just run the game, you run it, and, oh, hey, we tried to cross the gorge. Okay, how do you cross the gorge? I tie a rope and I walk across. Okay, you do so. Like, you wouldn't even consider trying to, roll any dice or anything. You just do what you need to do. Simple little things. So next up, some other ones I highly recommend would be Dungeon Crawl Classics. Zany, wacky, weird, goofy magic. Awesome, epic, a swordsman that can do all sorts of awesome things. Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu set in the real world, just with, terrible eldritch horrors that stalk the night. Mothership. Mothership is an awesome sci-fi horror RPG filled with stress, insanity, and combat is to be avoided at all cost. Those are incredibly simple recommendations for me. So, Old School Essentials, Dungeon Crawl Classics, Mothership, Call of Cthulhu. And it's very important that your tabletop role-playing game can have different, It can evoke different styles of play. Because when you play D&D, you expect there to be combat because combat is part of the game. But when you play like an old school game like Call of Cthulhu or whatever, then combat's to be avoided at all costs because combat's scary. So like you can approach the same situation but using different game systems, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, scared. Death of D&D. So Lorander, Death of D&D, basically the open game license, the OGL, is being updated. And what is going on is it seems to really be bad for content creators because they'll have to give up creative freedoms and licenses of their content. And if you make money off of it, then they can take a percentage of your profits. So very, very not cool. Is OSR affected by this new OGL thing? Same as Pathfinder. It could be potentially. So that's the thing. We genuinely don't know. And when I say we, I mean the community, because I'm not legalese versed. I don't know how to read a document with lawyer's eyes. We have many lawyers in our D&D YouTube sphere, and they do in fact have some of them are saying like yes it could, some of them are saying like no it can't. So we genuinely don't know everything just yet because it's still breaking news, but ultimately it could. And that is honestly where a lot of the legal problems are going to ensue, because beyond just the OSR and Pathfinder taking, basically the OGL, there's been a bunch of other things as well. And that includes video games. There's actually a bunch of video games that employ the OGL. And if they go backtracking on that, then that could be terrible news. So we'll have to see. I'm willing to bet with all the terrible PR that Wizards of the Coast is getting right now, they're probably going to have to change it. From Cloudy, recently started reading 1st and 2nd edition, was blown away how easy it is to run compared to 5e. The exclusion of the Dungeon Wilderness turn in 5e is criminal for how much easier it makes things. So, I wholeheartedly agree, right? So, I love the mechanization of danger, right? I like the mechanics of, hey, a turn is 10 minutes. If you explore around this room, it takes 10 minutes. And for every 10 minutes you're in the dungeon, I roll for a random encounter. Like, I love how simplistic that is, right? I love how incredibly easy that is for me to run, and more importantly, for my players to understand. Because a lot of times, if there's mechanics that the players don't understand, there can be at odds, right? Like, oh, hey, like the player wants to do something, but then you have to go and describe to them, okay, so if you want to do that, then mechanically we have to do it this way, and this thing may occur, and da-da-da, so-and-so. But when you have a simple game, you say, hey, like, we're in this room. What do you do? Hey, I want to check around to see if there's any secret doors in this room. Okay, that'll take you 10 minutes. Does that sound cool? Yeah, that's cool. So you take 10 minutes, you explore the room, I roll one. Oh, hey, random encounter. A monster comes pouring down the corridor. Let's go. Like, I love that stuff. I absolutely love it. Warhammer 40k or Warhammer Fantasy Battle or Paranoia are interesting as well. I do like those games. What I will say is, when it comes to the Warhammer, very much so, if you're playing with nerds that know a lot about the lore, it can either be really good or really bad. Because if they sit there and say, oh, that would never happen in lore, then that kind of sucks. But if they're super deep into the lore, then they could potentially add to the game. Like, that's cool. When it comes to Paranoia, the less you know about Paranoia, the better. Paranoia is a tabletop role-playing game where you should not know the rules. And that's literally all I'm going to say about it. Because the less you know about the game, and you just show up to play, the better it is. Lorender, VTM is awesome. I'm playing a Nazi in LA by night. I'm an old school Vampire the Masquerade storyteller. Vampire the Masquerade. What's interesting about Vampire is I'm willing to bet in a year or two there's going to be a huge resurgence of players because a video game is going to come out. And like the last time the Vampire the Masquerade game came out, like there was like a lot of people were talking about it. But yeah, there's gonna be a new video game coming out, and if that video game is very good, then it'll be really dope. Dread is also a very cool concept. I love the whole tower thing. Dread is the Jenga tower game, right? Dread TTRPG. And we're not talking about Judge Dredd, right? We're talking, yeah. Dread's the Jenga tower, yeah. Yeah, Dread is an incredibly great. You sit down to run a game for a night kind of game. I don't know how well it would go for a campaign. I don't know, but it's definitely great for a you gather people for a like, especially it's great for people who have never played a tabletop role playing game before, because then you're like, oh, like this is then you can lure them in. You can be like, oh, it's not always about being a nerd and rolling dice and saying I rolled a 17. Have I ever done 3d6 straight down the line style character creation? Absolutely, I have, Cloudy. I have indeed, and let me tell you, it's been awesome. So, what ends up happening is when you are allowed to make any character you want, some people make awesome characters. But unfortunately, there's some people who don't make awesome characters. And what ends up happening with those few people is I typically see that they're bringing in emotional baggage into a game, and they're expressing it through a character of their own design. Now, a way to mitigate that is to not allow anyone to make their character, in essence. When you have people roll 3d6 stats down the line for their character, the character practically makes itself, and it tells a story. When you have the character that's got a high strength but a low con, that tells a story. Like, okay, like they're super strong, but man, their HP sucks. Like, I want to make them a fighter, but their HP's bad. What do I do? Oh, hey, the person that has a really high charisma has a really low wisdom. What's going on here? Oh, hey, this person just rolled really good stats across the board. They can be a bunch of things, but maybe they'll excel at something else. And what I find is when you roll for your stats down the line, instead of bringing in emotional baggage, you truly create the character from the ground up. I really like it. I personally do it whenever I roll up characters for any campaign. Even if recently someone did a campaign where everyone rolled 46 for the stats and they could put them wherever they wanted. I personally chose to roll 3d6 down the line, because I genuinely feel like it's a lot more engaging for me. And now also something very important here is the 3d6 down the line. 3d6 versus 4d6 drop the lowest is also a very big departure. I really like adventurers versus heroes. I think adventurers rising to the occasion to do awesome things is awesome. I think heroes rising up to the occasion to do heroic things is expected. So I like adventurers with weaker stats better than heroes with epic stats. That's what I've got to say on that. I actually am running Dread next week. It's a fantastic game. So good. Heck yeah. I'm hoping for a remake of the old TV show Kindred the Embrace after the game comes out. That could be cool. I feel like you need a well-defined group to pull this off where everyone buys in. Yeah, that ties back, Dylan. That ties back into you run the game that you want to run, right? Like, I see a lot of people. I see a lot of DMs get sad because they say, oh, like I'm running this game and I really don't like it, but I have to run this game. No, you don't. Only run the games you want to play or run, and draw in players that want to play in that game. You don't need to subject yourself into running the kind of game that you don't want to run. And also, players don't subject themselves to the kind of games that they don't want to play in, right? If a player doesn't like a game, they'll dip, right? You as the DM, you can pick up your table and go wherever the heck you want. So, getting a group to play the game you want to play is as simple as running the game enough and advertising it out there. And eventually, if you build it, they will come. They will. Because there's players out there that really want to play. And when they'll find you eventually. Oh, gosh darn. I recently started running Tomb of Annihilation, and your work on that has been excellent in helping me prepare for it. I see what you mean. I have said group, but I've had players who are ungrateful. Yeah, and ungrateful players are the worst, right? Like, when you sit down and put in effort and people don't respect that effort, then they're not worth having. If you sit there and like for this instance here, you put in the effort to learn 5th edition, you put in the effort to read this adventure, you put in the effort to make these maps and to run these encounters and roleplay these NPCs, and you put in all this effort, and if they don't respect that, then they suck. When you put in effort and other people's don't, that's just the worst. I actually was recently talking to a coworker about this. How she, for Christmas, she had given a guy these well thought out gifts, and he in return literally shopped on December 24th and bought a pair of shoes that she had mentioned on December 23rd that she wanted. So she put in effort because she had bought these presents, weeks or months in advance. He put in next to no effort. And so, she was, really upset about that. And I don't blame her. It's the same thing when you're running a game. You put in the effort, weeks, months of effort. And the player just shows up at the last second. It's like, whatever. It's like, screw you. Cloudy, how often do you do skill challenges? That's an excellent one. So, skill challenges, I think, are fun. In fact, I regularly run one-shots, and I usually run them using my own written material. And in some of my written material, I have events, basically skill challenge events. So, it really depends. I like skill challenges because I say, hey, players, as you're running away from the pixies that are trying to paralyze you, you're running through the statue garden, roll, acrobatics checks. And then I'll allow everyone to roll an acrobatics check unless you decide to speak up and say something. You could say, hey, I want to use my ability to run further away. Or, oh, hey, I want to cast the spell, whatever. And then I'll be like, oh, you know what? That'll give you advantage on this check, or you'll automatically succeed, or so and so and so forth. So I love skill challenges. I think skill challenges are a fantastic way to adjudicate some missing aspects of the game, such as running away from monsters, and such as other chases, and in competitions other than just wrestling. Skill challenges can be incredibly engaging, and I certainly run them a lot. I run them a lot. Hi, dude. Much love to you. I am running Wild Beyond the Witchlight as I thought it would be a good idea. Once in Prismeer, I know it will be fine, yet I'm halfway through the carnival. And struggling with the sandbox element to that compared to the railroad once they leave the carnival. The more the players roll, the more fun. Okay, so what I'll say, Richard, is you can easily you weren't here, I assume, but there's a difference between running the adventure and running the story. It sounds like you want to run the story versus running the adventure. The adventure is about the adventurers doing adventurous things all the time. The story is about doing the story things for these heroes. So when you're trying to run the railroaded adventure, or when you're trying to run the adventure that is Wild Beyond the Witchlight, you could easily tune the game to being one or the other. You can make it the sandbox, you can make it the railroad, you can make it the roller coaster. So if you are struggling with the sandbox elements, get rid of them. This adventure is no longer a sandbox element, or sandbox. This is a railroad. You go to prescribed locations. Things do happen to you. You will go to this place. You will meet this NPC. This event will happen in the background. That makes it so much easier for you to prep and for your players to understand. What's really important is, do your players know? Do you allow your players to believe that they're in a sandbox, or do you tell your players straight up that they are on a railroad? That's the question you have to ask yourself, and I guess technically your players too, right? Are you going to run truly a sandbox adventure, or are you going to run a railroad adventure? There's nothing wrong with running a railroad adventure. Nothing at all. It makes your life simple. It makes your players' life simple. It makes life easy. It makes life fun, because simple is fun. Complex doesn't always necessarily mean fun. So I would say, instead of it being a sandbox where they can go anywhere, do anything, instead, hey, the guides are, like a creature is guiding them to the next destination. When they get to that destination, they are absolutely going to do a thing. They're going to a place. They're meeting an NPC. Just make it a railroad. Make it simple. Make it simple for you. Make it simple for your players. Absolutely agree. But he didn't just buy anything. He bought shoes she said she wanted. If you go through the effort to get a special gift for someone, to do it because you want to, not because you expect to get the same amount of effort. So in the scenario I was talking about with my fellow coworker, it was very much so obvious that he didn't put in any effort. Basically, he basically treated it like a mechanical thing of, oh, I'm getting you a gift because you said you wanted it, versus she got him things that not only he wanted, but something that she thought, like, not beyond just practicality, but she got him things that were, she believed that he would like. So, like, it wasn't necessarily about the effort, like, being reciprocated. It was just about the thought behind it. Like, he didn't put thinking behind it. He approached it practically. Oh, hey, she wanted shoes. I'll buy them on Christmas Eve. Versus, like, oh, hey, like, maybe she'll like this thing that I got her. This, whatever. Like, You could have got her a mug that said like best girlfriend ever. You could have got like that right there. Boom. That's a gift right there with thought behind it. Oh hey, the more the players roll, the more fun. That might not necessarily be true. I've been in games where literally every single thing was rolling, and that was not fun to me. Because there are times where I don't want to roll things. There's times where when I declare something and I say, "Hey DM, I want my character to do this." I want my DM to sometimes say, "Hey, you absolutely do that," or "Oh, hey, that is not possible." I don't want everything to come down to a dice roll. Bye now. This was great. Thank you, Iceman. Thank you. Thank you. I feel like there's definitely a difference between Railroad and a linear story. So, Dylan, how I break up my three styles of running games is Sandbox, Railroad, Roller Coaster. So the Sandbox, you can go anywhere, do anything, anytime. The Railroad, you're moving forward along a prescribed path, but you can go off on different junctions of the A, B, or C junction. And the Roller Coaster being, you go here, you do this, you sit down, you shut up, you play the game. That's how I like to diversify it. Hey, I started DMing my first adventure, Chris Strahd. I just want to say thank you all for the great, helpful content. Thank you, Tech. I feel like it's almost better with less rolling. If you don't need to roll, that means the RP is spot on sometimes. So, yeah, there are times where, like, a perfect example of this is when it comes to NPC interactions and reactions. So, if I talk to this NPC in earnest and I say, hey, you and me, we may have been enemies, but right now there's something bigger at stake. I know we had our exchanged blows in the past. You've hurt me, I've hurt you, but right now there's something bigger at play here. We've got to go fix this issue. We've got to do something about this, because if you and I don't work together, we're screwed. Come on, man. Like, we can resolve our differences now. We can resolve them later. It doesn't matter. But you and me, we've got to stick this out. And, like, if I go on this, like, long epic speech about how we got to go save the world with this, former adversary, and the DM says, okay, roll a persuasion check, I would be like, come on, dude, really? I don't want to roll a persuasion check when I sit there and, pour my heart out. You know what I'm saying? Like, that just doesn't sound cool to me. On the other hand, if a player says, hey, I want my character to tell him that we need to let bygones be bygones and we need to make this work out, then I'll be like, yeah, sure, roll a persuasion check. Right? I'll be okay with that. The difference between the role play and the role play is what I'll say. You can always make them roll and have the outcome not matter. I don't like that at all. Like, if people are rolling, I want it to matter. Like, I really want it to be where the player's choices mean something. Whether that mean that they choose to do like a character action, or they choose to, or I like say, hey, like, if you choose this action, you will roll. I want their choices to matter. Thanks, dude. I'd rather have the story driven by the players. I just finished an awesome Waterdeep campaign where I could make up stuff or whenever the party wanted to venture. Going into the Fae and making it the other worldly compared to all the other choices where I'm having the problem. For sure. Cloudy. Are purely random encounters a thing? Oh, I didn't get to read it. Got time. Cloudy, come back. I want to read it. Please. Are purely random encounters a thing of the past? Seems like everyone wants a main story element with everything. The idea of running into a wild animal because you're in the wilds isn't good enough. So, ultimately, Cloudy, the reason why random encounters are dead in modern gaming is, funnily enough, not necessarily tied to the story, but what I prescribe it to be is One, time management, and two, and far more importantly, is resource management. So in 5e, which is I'm just going to assume that we're talking about 5e here. What happens if you fight a bear when you're going from one town to the next? And it takes 3 days of travel, and on day number 2, you fight a bear. What happens? Well, here's what happens. We spend 30 minutes to an hour rolling up the encounter. We fight the bear. We kill the bear. And then, guess what? It didn't matter that the bear clawed my homie and bit me. I lost HP. My friend lost HP. I used an action surge. Well, guess what? We took a long rest. And guess what happens? It's like that encounter never happened. Now, flash back 50 years ago to original D&D. When you're traveling from one town to the next, let's say it takes 3 days. We get into a random encounter. We fought that bear. I took some damage. My homie took some damage. By the time we arrived at town, we look haggard because we haven't been getting our HP back. That's a big deal. We have the exact same scenario, but 2 different outcomes because we're running different game systems. And now the consequences of those random encounters means that, we're having 2 different outcomes. Maybe when we arrive to that new town in 5e, like the bandits look at us and think that we're badass and cool looking. But then we flash, back to original D&D. Oh, hey, and those bandits look at us and they can smell that we're weak. Maybe they try to pick on us, and that'll, immediately that starts some branching paths of these random encounters, The reason random encounters are dead is because in 5e things take too long with all bonus actions, reactions, etc. AoE. If you take 10 minutes, people would be cool with them, but they take 45 minutes. Yeah, so that was the first thing I mentioned was the time management. If a random encounter took 10 minutes, you would see more of them in the game, right? Like if random, because the only way a random encounter in 5e goes by in less than 10 minutes is if it is straight up like, oh, hey, the goblins throw a hail of javelins at you. Everyone roll dexterity saving throws. And then on your turn, okay, roll a attack check, and then you can adjudicate that however you will. Right, whether that be you roll strength checks or you roll a weapon attack or whatever. Then a random encounter could be done in literally 10 minutes. But unfortunately, due to the nature of 5e, with all of the actions and reactions and most important of all, the spellcasting, because spellcasting takes a tremendous amount of time, random encounters take too long. I don't want to... If I've got only 3 hours to play a session, do I really want to spend half of it, straight up half of it, doing random encounters that aren't pertinent to the adventure at hand? Probably not, right? I love building my random encounters from decisions where the party has made mistakes or done good roleplay. All the actions they do should have some effect. You can knit them into the boring bits of the plot or travel to make it personal for them. For sure. For sure. What is your favorite campaign that you have had as a player? Okay. So, fun fact about me, I am a professional DM. I am a almost forever DM. There are times when I do get to play, but it's not very frequently, because I personally just prefer being a DM over being a player. I very much so like being a DM. And so to that regard, what is my favorite campaign that I've had as a player? It's a small list. So let me try and compile that there. It would probably be, it may be Curse of Strahd. Because it's funny, I played a game of Curse of Strahd. It's funny because because I'm the forever DM, like I know all the tools of the trade and I know all the adventure modules. So whenever I'm like playing in someone else's adventure, I've got to be the I'm very much so the non-metagamey person that sits there and goes, "Hey gang, what are we gonna do today?" Like not knowing, like pretending like I don't know that if we go left we're gonna get screwed, kind of thing. It's pretty funny. Um, uh, it might be Curse of Strahd or. Mm, Man, that's a tough one. It might be yeah. It'd probably be Curse of Strahd. I uh, I had a genuinely good time as a player in that campaign. It was very much so like basically every time that I'm playing as a player in these campaigns, I can never be the leader, right? I can never be the go-to guy. I can never be the hey, what is your honest opinion about this and that, because I always have to metagame, or I always have to avoid metagaming by perfectly acting out my character, which I think is actually a great exercise for me because I genuinely make decisions not based on my as a player perceptions, but through my character alone. So it's very much so a great practice for me, and I love it. And all the time, because I'm truly playing up my character, sometimes we end up in the worst of two scenarios. But that's okay. Like I'm okay with saying like, oh, we got into that situation because that is truly, like my character, would likes to hug left when we go into the dungeon, or oh, hey, my character doesn't trust that NPC, even if like that NPC ends up being like a good guy, right? A Curse of Strahd game, and then I also see the follow up question of why was it good. The reason why it was good is because the DM truly made that the sandbox adventure that it was. I always prefer playing like sandbox versus playing in railroad or roller coaster style games. I always prefer it. So one, it was a great sandbox. Two, what was really really cool is my character had ambition from the start, and all throughout, my character's ambition came to fruition. And normally that doesn't end up happening because, either time runs up short or, or it just it's not conducive to a good environment. But ultimately in that game, my character, who was evil, right from the get-go, my character was evil because I rolled him up. I literally rolled I rolled for everything, right? Like, so I rolled up like, okay, so what's his alignment? Okay, he's evil. Okay, whatever stats. Okay, he's gonna be a wizard. Da da da. So and so. So he ended up being a gnome necromancy wizard. And literally right from the get go, like his ambitions were, hey, I'm trying to raise an army here. I want to raise an army of the undead, and lo and behold, over the course of the campaign, through organic roleplay, I did. It was awesome. Whoa! $5 from Nick. Happy to see you still at it. What are your thoughts on Dragonlance? I certainly think it's a cash grab, unfortunately. That's my thoughts, unfortunately. Thank you so much for the $5. Thank you. Yeah, let me get to it. Curse Strahd, it was a sandbox, and my PC got to thrive. I'm considering setting up Patrina as the big bad, thinking of her and the Dusk Elves. How can I foreshadow this throughout Curse of Strahd? Well, one, I think it sets itself up well, purely just rules as written. But far more importantly is, one, I actually made a video about Patrina. I'll go ahead and link it if you have not seen it. Patrina Velikovna. When you know, if you type in Patrina Velikovna, guess whose video is #1 in views besides that gosh darn Lunch Break Heroes guy. It's me. I actually did some writing for Lunch Break Heroes. He's like an employer of mine. So one, watch my video. I talk all about that. But two, get Casimir involved with the party. And it's gonna, I promise you, just having Casimir involved with the party, it's just going to naturally evolve. It's just going to naturally come up. It's going to naturally just seep into the party's like vision and what's going on. And eventually at the very end, when all the things kick off, it's going to be a natural buildup, and it's going to be so sweet. This would be a homebrew adventure, and going to the Third Coast, perhaps putting her phylactery in a different domain of dread. That could be cool too. I dig that. Yeah. So the thank you, Nick. The thing about the Dragonlance, sadly, I feel it's a cash grab. So ultimately, the D&D worlds, there's a lot of great old, awesome adventure settings, right? We've got the Dragonlance, and we've got, Ravenloft, and we've got Dark Sun and Greyhawk, and so, the list goes on and on. And unfortunately, Wizards of the Coast is not in their capacity to make those places as fleshed out and narratively rich, and also far more importantly, mechanically rich for 5e. It's just not going to happen. A per example is with Dragonlance. So Dragonlance, going back, you basically there were special rules involved with spellcasting, and there were special rules involving race, or whatever you want to call it now, ancestry, right? And there were special rules involving this, and that. But 5e mechanically, it can't be touched in some of those regards. It can't. Or more importantly, it won't, is what I'll say. It certainly has the potential, but they're just not going to do it. Now, that's really upsetting because Dragonlance, it's very beloved. A lot of people like it. And this is also very important for what's coming up next, is Planescape. Planescape is very much so beloved. And if Wizards of the Coast treats Planescape with the same amount of lack of care as they did with Dragonlance, they're going to start burning more and more bridges, which they already have, right? Sorry, I have a million questions, LOL. What was the time where one of your PCs died as a hero and was happy about it, and what was the time where a PC really didn't like it when they died? So that's a very good one. So I run games where PCs die. Now, that's very important because not everybody runs games where PCs die. Plenty of people run games where PCs never die, and whether that's never just brought up at the table, or if it is brought up at the table, it doesn't matter because PCs just don't die. I run a game where PCs died, gosh darn it. And if you're at my table and your PC is still alive, then you know that you have earned it. Not because I deemed that you lived, but you earned it through your actions and your deeds, and more importantly, through the dice, right? So, a time where a PC died as a hero and was happy about it was at the end of a campaign. My players fought a Lich, and they fought the Lich, but it was cool because even though they knew that they had pissed off this lich, they had killed this lich's hopes and dreams, because this lich was going to do something really cool, but they destroyed this device and killed the lich's baby, and the big bad lich shows up and just starts smiting everybody, and they were okay with that, because even though their PCs died, they fulfilled their task. Now, going on to where a PC didn't like when they died, I ran a game called The Frontier. This was a big West Marches style game. If you're not familiar with a West Marches style game, that is basically a game where I run it whenever I want, and anyone can show up and play for the session, and you go off on the adventure and do whatever. So it was me as the DM of this West Marches game, and I had 30 players that were active in this game. So I would post up and say, hey, like on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I'm going to run a game. Who wants to play? And then I'd have people show up. Now, over the course of the Frontier, it was 82 sessions, 79 dead PCs. 79 dead PCs. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of dead PCs. Mind you, it wasn't a 1-for-1. It wasn't like, oh, hey, like every session one person dies. What would end up happening is there was a few TBKs, so that really padded the numbers. But there would be occasions where, people would die individually. And that brings us to where someone didn't like when their PC died, because they had this PC for an incredibly long time. Of the 80 sessions, I want to say that PC was around for maybe 30 of them. Like a lot. Like this PC had been around for a long time. And at one point, they had engaged the dragon, and the dragon maliciously killed this PC. And I deemed it did so because, one, I always roll for whatever, the monster's attacking. But two, it was the prime opportunity. There was literally no better time for this dragon, from its perception, to kill this PC. But the player was very much so very upset about that. Which sucked because, one, that kills the mood. But two, also that sucked because throughout the entirety of this game, where 79 PCs died, people had not been complaining to me about their PCs dying. Whenever PCs died, they would say, okay, that was fair. Either the monster killed me or the trap killed me or whatever. Or also, interesting enough, the players would blame each other. Because, if they're in the dungeon and the tank pulls back, then all of a sudden the monsters rush in and hit the magic user. Then they're like, oh, screw you, talking to the other player, you killed me, essentially. So for the majority of those 79 dead PCs, everyone was okay with it. And that one right there, that one was kind of oh man, I don't want this kind of thing going on here. So, fighting liches and dying to dragon. Do you have a Streamlabs account, or how do you rather how do you rather get the cheddar? My missus took my phone from me, so I can't do it right now, yet I watched your chapter breakdown, so I will defo repay kindness tomorrow. Well, I'll tell you what, you certainly don't need to pay me. Obviously, any and every donation goes an incredibly long way, though. If you wanted to, on YouTube, you could become a YouTube premium member. Not a premium member, but, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the name. You could become, you could become one of my members on YouTube. You could sign up to my Patreon, or you could donate to a video. Thankfully, the internet makes it incredibly easy to give money to me if you want to, is what I'll say. So you can either donate on any one of the videos that you're watching, because nowadays when you when you click on a video, you can like you can donate to that video, and like it'll like make your video the top one. So you can do that. I occasionally get those from people. And fun enough, on my Curse of Strahd series as well, I've gotten that. So up to you, but thank you. Do you have a favorite adventure from older editions that you have or would like to convert to 5e? Okay, this is a very good one. So I have several. I definitely have several. So let me break it down here, because I definitely have several. So first things first. First things first. What I'll mention is Goodman Games is a company that they are the group that makes Dungeon Crawl Classics. They, on the side, also make 5e material as well. Sometimes they make 5e adventures, and sometimes they do conversions of their DCC adventures to 5e. But what I will say is, specifically, they have been doing basically revisions of old school adventures and making them for 5th edition. So they have made Castle Amber, Isle of Dread, Keep on the Borderlands. They've made several others as well. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what else they've done. I'd have to look at their list. But they haven't done everything yet because, unfortunately, converting things to 5th edition just takes time, and more importantly, requires space. Because 5e is so mechanically large that if you converted anything from old school to new, it's ridiculous. A perfect example of that being a monster stat block. So a monster stat block in old school games would be literally at most like 4 like lines, right? It'd be its health, its HP, its AC, so it's HP, its AC, its attacks, its damage, its saves, and like literally like very, very small numbers. Nothing major, nothing huge. In fact, actually, let me compare. Shall I compare thee to A Summer's Day? Let me find something for you here. Alrighty. Okay, perfect. I found one. Now let me add this here. It says I've already got a thing for that. How do I? Nope. You peeked behind the blue curtain. Let me. I'm like so focused now on showing you this. There we go. So look how tiny this stat block is for the Carcass Crawler. You have your AC, your HD, your hit dice, your attacks, your THAC0, which is your plus to hit, movement, your saves, morale, alignment, XP, your number appearing, and your treasure. And then underneath that, you would have like whatever special things going on. So this thing causes paralysis and can cling to walls. That is so incredibly tiny. Now a 5e version of this would take up, at the bare minimum, this Carcass Crawler, if you were to stat it out, would in fact be like, it would take up at least like one column, right? Because 5e stat blocks are so freaking huge. So going back to the main question, though, what I would want to return to 5th edition is Number one, I would like to see a 5e conversion of... I was going to say Isle of Dread, but they've already done that. Secret of Bone Hill. So first things first, Secret of Bone Hill. Oh gosh. Secret of Bone Hill. So Secret of Bone Hill is a classic level 1 starting adventure, and it has everything that I love about a starting adventure. You've got a town to traverse in and cavort and do all the fun stuff. 2, it has just a very, very great selection of NPCs to interact with. And also 3, far more very, very important here, is the Secret of Bone Hill is a great sandbox adventure in that you have a starting environment and you can go where you want to go, do what you want to do, and your actions are probably going to be based on the rumors that you hear in town. Because in town, you're going to hear a rumor about, oh, hey, we heard that there's a gambling hall in to the north if you go into this forest. Oh, hey, we hear that, there's some bugbears patrolling around this one hill. What's up with that? So, first and foremost, I would love that as a conversion because I think that is one of the better, starting adventures of all of 5e, or of Evolved D&D. I'm trying to think of another one that I'd love to see converted. I'd have to let me take a look at. Yeah, I'm actually going to pull up the catalog here. D&D. Okay. OSR module. No. In Search of the Unknown would be cool. Ghost Tower of Inverness. That would actually be pretty baller. Dungeonland. Actually, Dungeonland would actually be pretty cool. Dungeonland is EX1, Expert 1, for those of you that know what's up. And let me just try and grab one more. Secret of Bone Hill, yep. Into the Mill. White Plume Mountain, already been done by Wizards of the Coast themselves. Castle Amber, already been done by Goodman Games. I'm trying to find just one more. Isle of Dread's already been done. Expedition to Barrier Peaks, boom. Expedition to Barrier Peaks, I think would be great. Dungeonland and Expedition to Barrier Peaks. Yep. So those are some that I'd convert to 5e. That is a great story, LMFAO. I always remember my worst player death. I rolled enough to play a paladin, yet chose to be a knight. I had the campaign written around me. I got in the character side plot and the mind flayers. Our group DM is brutal and has always been. I am more lenient after being a DM. I'm not sure I have made the correct choice. I played for 30 years, yet struggle with this. Where's your line? My line on brutality when it comes to running games is it depends on the campaign. Simple as that. As I mentioned before, with that Frontier game, the West Marches game, I didn't care about you. The world didn't care about you. You had to care for yourself. PCs died left and right. And, there's TBKs left and right. I didn't care. On the other hand, there are times where I'm running a dedicated campaign and I'm not going to just all of a sudden, I'm not going to not basically tell you, make it obvious that there's danger around the corner, right? I'm going to be very much so, oh, hey, if you're going to the dungeon, it is scary. Be warned, right? Simple as that. And so if players, come out ahead because they think smart and tactfully, then sure. If a PC dies because they weren't acting of a smart accord, then that's up to them. I have never ran a game where I have said, "Hey, PC death is off the table." I've never ran a game like that, or a campaign like that anyway. I've ran one shots like that, but I've never run campaigns like that because I genuinely think that it would not be a fun time for me. My forever DM changed Pathfinder's Skulls and Shackles to 5e. That was awesome. Shadows over Bogenhofen. Oh, God. I accidentally clicked on the wrong tab. Where is your line? My line is dependent on the campaign. It sucks only having one monitor when streaming. I'm not gonna lie. I gotta thumb through 20 different tabs. Pretty freaking annoying. So I've been Googling Shadows over Bogenhofen, and that is Vermintide. Warhammer. I didn't know. And Curse of Strahd, are there any interesting combat or social encounters you recommend to lower level parties? I'm struggling to not just throw various types of undead at them, like zombies, vampires, revenants. So mind you, I'm never gonna go into any spoilers on a live stream unless that live stream is dedicated to a specific module. So I'm not gonna go into spoiler territory here. But what I will say is there is very much so a lot of interesting combat or social encounters you can have it with low level with people, right? Because, in the world of Curse of Strahd, yeah, there's zombies and vampires, revenants, oh my. But truly the most horrifying aspect of the whole adventure is that there's people. And, how do your, these people have been living in this terrible world for so long. And your players come in and they're the movers and shakers of the world. How does the world react to their presence? How do the players try and influence the world, if at all? The interactions your players have with the humans and humanoids of Curse of Strahd, which in Curse of Strahd, is humans. That is truly, I think, where the campaign shines. Their dealings and interactions with the denizens of the world that are just trying to get by, not just the monsters that try to eat people, because that's what monsters do. So my answer there is the citizens of the world make for the most unique combats and social encounters. When using environmental hazards and traps that are concealed and not on a grid, say a bear trap or quicksand, do you roll for detection versus their passive perception and go from there, or the other way? So I never use passive perception in combat purely because passive perception is, quite frankly, too gamified in 5e for my liking. Because with just basically having a relatively high wisdom and having like the skill means your passive perception like gets past the majority of things, which I think is like really, really lame. So I just don't use it. I know there's a lot of people that do, but I just don't. So in a combat scenario where there is bear traps and whatnot, it purely come down to one, context clues, and two, if the players take the time to ask, hey, like, is there anything on the ground? Like, because if I tell them, like, okay, as you're chasing after the bugbears in the alley, you see that they are marching in a certain column, and then they turn around and fight. Like, because I told them they're running away in a column, that might be the context clue that they need to say, hey, like, why were they running in a column? Like, what's up with that? If they forget in 10 minutes, then that's on them, right? But if they, if they say, hey, like, like, why were they running in this column? Then it's like, oh, hey, like, maybe something's up. Who knows? I like to use context clues and avoid the gamification of passive perception. Especially, too, because there's also a feat. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's alert or something, which gives you like a plus to your perception. And all of a sudden it's like literally like unless something has like I'm pretty sure like right at level 1 you can have like a passive perception of like 20 or something. It's like it's absurd for no reason. I have a campaign where I'm going back to, and one of my PCs has the Hammer of Thunderbolts. I've already tried to buy and barter for it. Any suggestions to remove the weapon and not be cheap? Yeah, so removing things that players have earned always sucks. So first things first, if you really, really, really don't want them to have it, then you could say, hey, like, like out of game, you talk to them and say, hey, like, is there any way we can like do away with this? But if that ruffles too many feathers and you really want an in-game explanation as to why the weapon disappears, it could be as simple as the weapon is stolen, the weapon is damaged, the weapon is split up, and the player has to go on a quest to retrieve it. It could be let's see, so like, stolen, damaged, split up. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's a number of things you could do, but what I will say is, like, it always sucks to lose something that you've earned. It really, really does. And especially if you do it maliciously in a way that they have no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Hammer of Thunderbolts doesn't work without Gauntlets of Ogre Power and Mantle of Giant Strength. Okay. So there's that. So I would. first handle it out of game, but in game it can be damaged, stolen, or split apart. Either way, there's a cool quest involved to get it back. Very well put. I'd never really considered that. Thank you. No problem, Curtis. You just inspired me to make a quest to make them give it up. Thanks, having a quest is always a good option. Yeah, because like I mentioned, like if someone just steals it and it disappears from the game world, that's boring. If someone steals it and then all of a sudden it's now in the hands of a powerful warlord who's using it to terrorize a nearby barony, and you rise up to fight and to alleviate the barony and also retrieve your weapon, then you've got a story tied with it. That's cool. In my personal opinion, every magic item your players possess should have a story tied behind it. Every single one. Oh, this ring of protection? Oh yeah, I dived into a cave and I opened a chest underwater, and an eel shocked me when I opened the chest, but I killed the eel and now I've got this ring. Like, boom, you got a story behind it. That hammer of thunderbolts. Oh, hey, I got it, but then it got stolen, and then we had to fight this terrible, baron to get it. And now I've saved the people, and the people, now have a banner in this barony of a thunderbolt. Boom, you got a story behind it. Oh boy, I just checked. I have 11,977 subscribers. I am 23 subs away from that sweet 12K subs. I am digging it. Digging it. I'll be putting out much more content soon. So hopefully that those numbers will go up, up, up. Hopefully. Did you ever have players that got themselves killed by trying to force a long rest in a dangerous place where the encounter rate was high? Yes! So, mind you, for my a while ago, my games used to be, the traditional short rest is 1 hour, long rest is 8 hours when it comes to 5e. But nowadays, I am very much so of the opinion that 5e runs a lot better for me and just the game as a whole when short rest is 8 hours and long rest is a week. I'm finding that is a lot more engaging of a game experience than just trying to cheese the mechanic of, oh hey, if we sleep for a few hours, then all of a sudden we stave off death. But even still, back in the days of my short rest 8 hour or 1 hour, long rest 8 hours, I did have times where I said like, hey, like you're in the dungeon, you try to take a long rest. I'm gonna be rolling for random encounters, and then eventually they people would get attritioned out. That's absolutely happened before. But nowadays, that is no longer the case, because nowadays it is impossible for people to take a long rest in the dungeon. Now, in the wilderness, that's different. The wilderness, maybe there's a potential there, but specifically in a dungeon, no way, no how. You're going to spend a week in a dungeon where there's monsters involved. Yes, but I feel I've mitigated that now thanks to short rest, 8 hours, long rest 1 a week. Been grinding out all your Chris Strahd vids. I was a DM for Dragon of Icespire Peak, and now I'm DMing Chris Strahd. Me and my players absolutely cannot wait. Heck yeah. Heck yeah, Josh. It's funny. I'm willing to bet you're one of the many people there that are causing the Chris Strahd videos to grow, because I can see there in my YouTube analytics that the Chris Strahd videos they've been doing incredibly well recently. They are rising in popularity. Like, I mean, those videos came out in 2020. They came out, in 2020, and they're still getting hundreds of views a month, which is really good for me anyway. Really, really good for me. Like, I took a peek right now in my the beginning of that series, the chapter 3 Village of Barovia, just hit a sweet 19,000 views, and it's about to hit 20,000 views pretty soon. Pretty cool stuff. Richard, I gave you the hammer because of the 3 keys in the dragon heist. I had a key for getting a red dragon scale from red water Davian dragon. As chromatic dragons aren't welcome, I made a mind FK. Pocket Dimension, where a wizard who was so cursed they didn't remember their sex or race had a house in Trollskull Alley. I overlooked the Dragon Horde and asked them to roll. Damn forgetting prep. I mean, I personally love rolling for random things versus prepping the loot. I personally love telling my players, all right, gang, who's going to roll this D100? Who's going to roll this D4 or this D6? Who's going to roll this D100? I love that. Because, like, it gets everyone involved. Everyone gets hyped. And then they're rolling. It's like, oh, you rolled so good. Oh, no, screw you. You rolled so bad. You know, I love getting the players involved in that. Have you ever had to kick a player from your table? Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have. It's never fun, but it's ultimately healthy for the table and your sanity. So ultimately, you'll get a player every once in a while. If you're like me, who's DM'd for hundreds of people, you'll ultimately eventually get someone that can ruin the vibe. You not just ruin the vibe of the campaign, but also ruin the vibe of the group with their actions, with their attitude, with their whatever. And I have ultimately had to kick several people from my tables in the past. It sucks, but you gotta do it. So I have a player wanting to play an Artificer for that Chris Strahd campaign. How doable will that be? Oh, how doable will that be? I know there is a high demand for supplies and goods in most of Barovia. How should I go about DMing someone playing an Artificer for Curse of Strahd? So what I'll tell you is I've never had this problem because I just don't allow Artificers at my table. Ultimately, I find that I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. So I personally love running lower fantasy settings and environments. 5e ultimately is a high fantasy setting and environment and game, right? Like vanilla 5e is pretty high fantasy. But Artificer takes it a step further. It ultimately does. Like without changing anything at all whatsoever about like the flavor or the mechanics of Artificer, Artificer ultimately makes the power level and the fantasy level go up another tier. Because they produce magical items that normally have to be found in the world. Because they can produce items that may not necessarily fit well with your environment, such as guns or suits of, mechanical suits or whatever. So, ultimately, I like running lower vibe settings, and Artificers push that up. Curse of Strahd is a awesome adventure for those low fantasy environments, because you're going into the unknown, you're going to dark places, and it feels awesome to feel weak. Which is why I love running Curse of Strahd using old school rules. I think Curse of Strahd is actually a fantastic campaign using, like, you know, original D&D and advanced D&D, right? But ultimately, how do we handle the Artificer in Curse of Strahd? Because what's going to happen is you're going to paint a bleak world. You're going to paint this dark environment. You're going to paint these downtrodden people. You're going to be painting this picture. And whereas all of the other classes, you know, can only do a little bit, the Artificer can do a ton, right? The Artificer can all of a sudden, you know, produce these magical items which normally cannot be found in this campaign. The Artificer can create, you know, devices which ultimately shake up the foundation of the environment. Ultimately, the Artificer changes the landscape, and what I'm going to tell you is it may change the landscape in a way that you don't desire. So first and foremost, what I'm going to tell you is, if you do not want that change in this world, just tell your player, hey, I don't want an Artificer in this game. Like, yeah, the player wants to play an Artificer, but it's far more important that you run a game that you want to run versus running a game that you're forced to run. So that's my first bit of advice there is, like, if you do not want this Artificer, then don't have him. But if you are okay with the Artificer, then understand that the world is going to change. The world is absolutely going to not be how it is originally intended. That might be fine for you, right? That might be. But it may not. Night, dude. Night, Richard. I agree on that part. I'd much rather him play a ranger if he wants to excel at long range. He's just been hyping up this character so much, I'd feel bad to tell him no. So, yeah. What ultimately I always find when people are hyping up a character is it never works out. No, much like how no battle plan survives the enemy, no character concept survives a campaign. I would tell this character, I would tell the player this. But yeah, so thanks for the feedback. Those are good points I'll make to him. Yeah, so that's what I'll say is, you want to run a game a certain way, and that character is not going to fit well into this game that you want to run. Like you may run some game some other day that character will be good for, but it is not this day. Is what you might have to say. So tell them that this PC will warp the campaign in a way you may not desire it to go. Have you ever used the optional rule slow natural healing? It seems like an alternative to gritty realism in curbing long rest abuse. I'm trying to think of the vernacular here. So I run games using short rest 8 hours, long rest is a week now in 5e. So is that the gritty realism? Is that the one you're referring to? Or I'm trying to remember the vernacular here. Because I right now, all of my 5e games are short rest 8 hours, long rest is a week. Slow natural healing. Let me see if I can look that up in the meantime. 5e slow natural healing. At the end of a long rest, characters don't regain HP at the end of a long rest. Instead, a character can spend hit dice to heal at the end of the long rest, just as with the short rest. Okay. So that is the slow natural healing. Alrighty, so, yeah, I have not ever used slow natural healing. Um, Ultimately, though, the problem with the mechanic of slow natural healing versus gritty realism is ultimately, like, yeah, your HP is always tied to your hit dice, but what's going to suck is or not necessarily suck, but what's going to end up happening is the class features, they come back. I'm naturally just assuming that with slow natural healing, your class abilities come back, right? So what ends up happening is, if you're the wizard, oh man, that sucks. Like, I lost half my HP, but that's okay. I still have my fireball. Versus the fighter, like, oh man, I've lost a bunch of my HP, and like HP is essentially part of my class resource because I'm getting hit a lot. Something very important about class design, and more importantly class balance, is the number of encounters you get into directly reflect the balance of the class. If you run a game where you only ever get into one encounter a day before you get a long rest in, then the fighter sucks. The fighter is terrible. The comparison here is the fighter and the wizard. The wizard shoots a fireball, hitting 2 people for 8d6 damage. How long would it take for the fighter to do 16d6 damage? It would take a long time. And that is why, if you only get into one encounter, your fighter is not going to be able to do 16d6 damage versus the wizard is able to do so. But then alternatively, if you run a game where you get into 20 encounters before you get a long rest, then the fighter's awesome because the fighter keeps getting their class resources back on short rest. And that means they can use their second wind to heal, and they can use their action surge again and again. And they get whatever subclass, cool little features on the side. But ultimately, the wizard's going to suck, because after a few encounters, the wizard's down to cantrips. And cantrips are dookie compared to what some of the other classes can do. So it's important to think about, your class balance in regards of the game that you're running. Because I know if I show up to a game and I roll up a fighter, and then the DM is the kind of DM that only rolls one encounter a day, then I'm gonna be like, hey man, as a fighter, I'm getting shortchanged here because everyone, the wizard gets to shoot their fireball every day, and then the cleric gets to cast their not Toll of the Dead, but like their AoE thing. It's the spirits, spiritual guardians. That's it. And then me as the fighter, I don't get to do those cool things. I just get to swing my sword twice, and then that's all I get to do every day. So never used it, but I fear that marshals would suffer more. Because what I do like about the gritty realism of the short rest 8 hours, long rest is a week, is that you get into a bunch of combats, and in the beginning, if you're playing it safe, the spellcasters are doing cool. But then you start going on those long expeditions, and oh my gosh, those fighters feel so cool. Those fighters are marathon men. Those fighters keep on going and going and going. The barbarians keep on going because they've got a ton of HP from the start. But the fighter in particular, they can go the distance like no one else can. Thanks for the feedback. Those are good points I'll make to him. No problem, Josh. So in regards of the Artificer, I'm just personally not a fan, because I want to paint a world where you have to earn your keep. Like I mentioned earlier, I want every magical weapon item in your character, in the roster, to have a story tied behind it. You got that sword because you disarmed the enemy warlord when you're fighting on the lava pit, and like you get to use it against him. You got that staff of thunderbolts when you traversed through the lightning bolt, ridden hallway and came out the other side. But with an artificer, you lose that story. With an artificer, all of a sudden, the artificer's like, well, I pulled this thing out of my back pocket. The artificer's like, you know what? I kind of really wanted that one magical item. And then all of a sudden they get it. Yeah, I've never been a fan of the artificer. It doesn't fit the classic D&D setting I like, the low fantasy, as you put it. Yeah, so what's funny is, ultimately, there needs to be artificers in the world, because how were magical items made, right? And like, because like the magical items have to be made some way, somehow, right? My druid has lovely fuzzy purple slippers that let me walk on walls because we killed another mercenary group with lots of magical weapons. Exactly, right? You got a story behind it. You didn't just pull those purple fuzzy slippers out of thin air. You got them. You earned it. You made some friends and foes along the way. You got into an interesting combat encounter. You used them thereafter for various activities. You have a story behind it. It's not just, oh, I felt like getting these today because that's the best thing for my character, so I'll get that. No, you got a cool story behind it. Which is why I personally do not like tailoring my loot tables. I personally love it when my players, do go somewhere, do something, and I say, hey, player, time to roll on the treasure table. Boom. And then you get whatever you get. And obviously it leads to ridiculous circumstances sometimes, like in one of my more recent campaigns, a lawful paladin rolled up a talisman of pure evil, and he was like, no way, I'm not using that, So sometimes it just draws up funny results. Alrighty. How do you do downtime? It seems like an inevitable thing to do at some point in an adventure, but it's always so awkward for players, not to mention daily cost of living and such. So it really comes down to the adventure at hand. There are some adventures where there is no downtime, because you're out in the wilderness, you're in the dungeon, you are somewhere, some place doing something. But then there are adventures where downtime should be inevitable. Are they, cavorting and cahooting with the local populace? Are they studying? Are they training? Are they gambling? Are they researching? Are they doing something? So what I like to do is, if I'm running a campaign where they do go back to town and they spend some downtime there, then I say, all right, gang, we're going to have a week off. All right, player one, what do you do? And then player one says, oh, yeah, I'm going to go gambling. I'm like, okay. Then player two, what do you do? Player two is like, I'm going to go research something. Player three, what do you do? Player three is like, oh, I want to go gamble too. It's like, okay. So then we get all that, and then I start to roll for what's going on. Okay, so players 1 and 3, you're gambling. Give me a series of skill checks to see how your gambling goes. Oh, hey, player 1, you made it big. Oh, hey, player 3, you lost a whole bunch of gold. So on and so forth. So I like to do it mechanically, because doing it mechanically makes it very simple. Very simple for everyone to understand, and also very simple for the outcomes to occur. You gamble, there's a chance you win and a chance to lose. You research, there's a chance you learn something, and there's a chance you learn nothing. Things like that. Making it mechanical. Make the stakes obvious and fun. I love making fun games for my players to play on downtime, such as cards or dice or stuff. They play IRL to pass some time. There you go. Like the time two players in the same campaign rolled for a flute of rat controlling. Exactly, right? Like one time I ran a campaign, and in the beginning, one person rolled a flute of the sewers. And so he was able to, she was able to command rats. And then another player really, really wanted it. And wouldn't you know, I had them at some point, like they just got done like looting someplace. And I'm like, okay, as you're looting it, roll on the treasure table. And wouldn't you know, out of everything in the whole wide world, I rolled up another, horn of the sewers. And like that right there just added to the hilarity of the situation. Like that's so funny. That's so great. Flute of rat controlling sounds so fun and chaotic. I'd make two of them and have two players fight over who controls the rats. A duel of the rats. It got really funny in that campaign because they used the rats to like clean up their house, and then like one person was obsessed with rats, and then like at some point they met a guy who could command rats as well. Like so, just purely unintentionally, there was a bunch of like rat shenanigans going on. Kind of funny. Haha, we wanted to basically be Pied Piper, and my character was against it because it sounds so stupid. It sounded stupid, but it was hilarious. It was pretty funny. And ultimately, I promise you, like, I could have sat there and tailored some magical item for that party, right? I could have sat there and been like, okay, you know what, your character, I think it'll be really cool if your character has this kind of thing. And then, like, but if I tailored it, I don't think I would have gotten as a fun a story out of it. But it was because it was so organic, because it was so random, that made it special. You want to talk some Icewind Dale Rime with the Frostman? I'm down. You got any questions about it? Feel free to ask. What treasure tables do you roll on? Does it depend on level or what? Yeah, it entirely depends on who they're fighting, who they're stealing from, what they had to overcome. Because I just simply use the DMG's magic treasure table or magic or just treasure table in general. You mentioned in your video guide you recommend that the PCs not be from Icewind Dale, so they're not always cutting in like, do I know this? Do you stand by that? I stand by that. I always stand by every single adventure where you're going off to a exciting, scary, weird, strange, insert whatever environment. I always recommend that no PC is from there. Always. Oh. Hello? Oh. Got my internet cut out for a second there. Alrighty, so okay, it's still working. Good. Alrighty, because ultimately, one, that's annoying. It's basically having like Navi, the Legend of Zelda fairy on your shoulder the whole time. But two, and far more importantly, it's an imbalance in player equality. I like it when both the player and the player character are on the same page, first off. And secondly, I like it when all PCs are on the same footing in regards of potential knowledge. It seems to mean being from Icewind Dale would make you more invested in when it's threatened. So the quick solution to that is, one, make friends with the denizens therein, and two, keep them trapped there forever. Like, my solution to Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden is, okay, players, as you make your way through the pass, making your way to Icewind Dale, an avalanche crawls, comes crushing down behind you, you are now trapped in the frigid land of Icewind Dale, with only your wits and all of your friends alongside. Simple as that. Whoopsie. Yeah. So I prefer players and PCs be on the same page. And also, I like when PCs all have the same knowledge. One of my PCs wanted to say he grew up in Barovia. He knows nothing about the campaign or area IRL, so that was an immediate no. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, and the thing is, too, is there's multiple, so, I just listed those. Another very important reason I don't like that is because they, typically, if someone says, hey, I want to be from this area, what a lot of times to me that's coming out as is, oh, I want power. I want knowledge. I want something, right? I want to be better. And it, for me, I don't want that. I don't want to deal with someone saying oh, well, my character would know this because I'm from this area. Or, oh, because I grew up in this area, I'm more knowledgeable than all of you other players, I don't want that. I do not want that at all. I wish Icewind Dale was sold as a hex crawl. It is a bit awkward having so much to do in the wilderness, but it not being in structured way via hex crawl. So, one, I think it would be better as a hex crawl too. But two, sadly, 5e will never have a hex crawl ever again. The developers at Wizards of the Coast have moved on from making adventures. We were talking about this earlier. The adventure versus the story. When we had adventures like Curse of Strahd and Tomb of Annihilation, those are adventures. The past several adventure modules that have come out are the story. They're not making adventure environments. They're making linear adventures. They're not making they're not making, whatever. They're typically making, what do you call those things? They're making more linear adventures than they're making adventures. You're tripping, no fun. People want to be from the campaign so it feels like they belong instead of a pack of anthropomorphic animals saving the soulless, pitiful Barovias. So I'll tell you what, I am jaded because I've interacted with the people that want supremacy. I'm jaded because I have dealt with those people who say, oh, I want to be from that area because I want to be able to ask the question every 2 seconds and because I want to be better than everyone else at the table. I've dealt with those people plenty of times, first off. And then secondly, I find that adventures are fun when you have genuinely no idea what's going on. Oh, hey, what's in that area? We don't know. Let's go find out. I think that's more engaging than, oh, hey, what's in that area? Hey, DM, what's in that area? You know what I'm saying? I like the adventurous side of the adventure to shine versus the player. And also, very, very importantly, is I also don't like the background. I don't like the things before the game. Or I don't like the things that never were part of the game to influence the game. You know what I'm saying? I want us all to be on the same page. I want us all to show up at the table and we're all learning together. Okay, we show up to this new area. Okay, now we're all going to be learning about this new area together. Versus, it feels kind of stilted when you have to ask constantly oh, hey, oh, hey, there's my best friend, Pete. Oh, hey, DM, what do I know about Pete, even though he's my best friend? That feels very stilted to me, you know what I'm saying? How are you feeling about 1D&D? Personally, I personally like a lot of the stuff they're adding, and I'm also disappointed at other things. Same here, Josh. Same here. So, what I'm going to tell you is I like some of the things, and I don't like some of the other things. Ultimately, I know for a fact that 1D&D is not going to make the changes to 5e that I want made. I know that for a fact. And that is something that I'm going to have to struggle with and also not struggle with, because when we get a clear picture of both 1D&D and also the OGL, I am personally going to be making my own version of 1D&D. And I'm going to be making the changes that I feel are necessary to make 1D&D the game that people want to play, is what I'll say. I know that they won't change what I want, and I'll make those changes. If a PC wants to be a resident in the region, they always get a peasant's worth of info on the region, which is not much. Only way to keep it balanced, it seems. But then, so even if you, like I personally, if I were to allow someone from an area, instead of letting them ask constantly, like, oh, hey, do I know this? Do I know this? Do I know this? I would basically draw up, like, a paper and say, like, hey, like, here are the bullet points of what you know, and that's the end of story. Never ask me anything ever. Like, I would do that, right? Like, if someone was like, oh, hey, I'm from, this area, and I'm like, okay, so here are the bullet points. You know that there's this cave that people talk about. You know that there's this monster floating around the area. But other than that, you don't know nothing. Like, never ask me any question ever. Because I never want to break up the game to focus on a single PC asking for a bit of knowledge that they should already know. One of my favorite things that they should have done years ago are the personalized parents, like orc, elf, dwarf, human, etc., not just human, elf, or human orc. So what I'll say is, I personally think that they haven't even gone far enough in that regard. I think that ultimately D&D in its next iteration, to both please the min-maxers, to please the progressive side of things, to please the people that want to focus more on other things, I think they just need to get rid of the mechanical notions tied behind race. That's my crazy idea. I think that there should be literally no mechanical input at all whatsoever tied to race for the next iterations of D&D. Now, don't get me wrong. I love, like in old school, I love classes race. In 5e currently, I like that the orc gets a +2 to strength and whatever. I like that. But I understand that as the times move on, and also as the mechanics move on, things do need to change. And one of my ideas is simply just remove any and all mechanics tied behind race, or whatever they're going to call it in the future. I assume they're going to call it ancestry or genealogy. I don't know what the frig they're going to call it. But I think they should just get rid of it. It doesn't matter who your mommy and daddy were. You've got this ability. Or you don't have any abilities tied behind, your mommy and daddy. You know what I'm saying? Is Adventures League official D&D material, and have you played any of it? Yes and yes. So, Adventures League material is actually very interesting. So, Adventures League material for a lot of the adventures is typically cut content. So, a perfect example of that would be good old... two of my most favorites are Waterdeep and Curse of Strahd. So... in adventure for Waterdeep, they had written the book, or they're writing the book, and then they had to trim it down, and they had to cut a bunch of the content. And so what they do is they cut content to thin the book, and then all of the cut content goes to Adventures League. However, in my personal opinion, sometimes some of the better content is the Adventures League content versus the actual book content. Like the Waterdeep stuff is fantastic. The Dragon Heist stuff is freaking great. I love it. In fact, I might even be so far as to say that I prefer the Adventures League Waterdeep Dragon Heist content over the actual adventure module itself. Yes, and yes, I like a ton of it. Now, mind you, something important is the Adventures League content is typically written to be accomplished by a group of random people in a certain amount of time. So they are written in linear forms and fashion, but they can easily be converted to not being so, and you can easily fit them into the adventures at hand. So, for example, being that Waterdeep Dragon Heist stuff, you can easily put the Adventures League content into the actual adventure itself, and it fits perfectly. The Curse of Strahd stuff is fantastic, too. The Curse of Strahd Adventures League stuff fits incredibly well with the Curse of Strahd adventure. How would you run the Slod Tadpole Secret? I've heard it's pretty anticlimactic as written. So, yeah, Benjamin. So, that one is, as written, oh, hey, you've got something growing in you. You need to cast a spell, or at some point you just automatically die. Like, it is so anticlimactic. So, what I would suggest is, one, I would suggest you take a look at all my extra secrets that I have written up, because I've got a ton of cool secrets in there. But two, if you are dedicated to running the Slod Tadpole Secret, what I would do is, I would make it truly a game mechanic throughout the entirety of the adventure, where maybe they're getting some benefits, like maybe you get like a +2 magical resistance, or maybe you get like a new action that you can do or something. But on the downside, there's something going on. Maybe your hit dice are being taken away because this thing's growing inside of you. Maybe you sporadically lose HP. Maybe it makes you more susceptible to the cold. Maybe there's a bunch of ways you can give both mechanical bonuses and detriments. And then finally, for the grand finale, when the thing finally splits, you could have it truly be where instead of it's just an outright, okay, because you didn't cast the spell in time you die, it could be something else. Like, it could be, oh, hey, it could be like, oh, hey, you take a bunch of damage, and now there's this lad running around, and, while this is going on, people are trying to inspect your body, and, there's a lot of ways you can make that interesting. A lot of ways, other than just the anticlimactic, oh, it's over. So I would say, give mechanical benefits and drawbacks, and make the finale of it more than just you're dead. What is your favorite 5e adventure? What is your favorite adventure for 5e? So, very, very simple one for me when it comes to favorite 5e adventure. That is 5e Tomb of Annihilation. Tomb of Annihilation does exactly what I want when it comes to an adventure. You have a fantastic place to explore. You have unique and engaging combat opportunities with interesting foes, and you have fantastic roleplay potential with the NPCs, factions, and denizens of the environment. The 3 pillars of D&D play right there: combat, exploration, roleplay. It excels at every single one of them, and I love it so much. I've ran Tomb of Annihilation 4 times now, and I still want to run it more. I want to run it using different game systems. I want to run it with more and more people. I want to keep running it again and again because every time I run it, it feels so freaking good. Now, my other favorite adventure before 5e, that's a tough one. My favorite adventure before 5e. Oof. That might be. It might be Secret of Bone Hill. I think Secret of Bone Hill is just like, it's just such a go-to one for me. Secret of Bone Hill is just a fun environment. It's got the classic level 1 environment where you get to cultivate and drop and rise. You've got like a hex crawl area with a ton of great rumors to explore around. You've got interesting dungeons. You've got a home base, which you can either like try and renovate a place, or you can like try and take over another place. It's so fun. So I'd say maybe Secret of Bone Hill. Good to know. I found that Icewind Dale AL stuff, and it was crazy how much stuff was in them. New weather patterns, hazards, monsters, even subclasses. Now I'm trying to gather them all. Yeah. So I would say if you like an adventure module, or you just like the theme, the tone, the setting, the feel, then check out the Adventures League content for it too, because it's great. As I mentioned before, I specifically love the Waterdeep Dragon Heist and the Curse of Strahd AL content. I also like the Icewind Dale content as well. But specifically just like, because like oh my gosh, like the Waterdeep Dragon Heist stuff, like just so good. I freaking love it. And not only that, but also it's great for like adding onto your campaigns, and it's great for just sitting down for beer and pretzel style games. It's great for like incorporating it in a number of different ways. Like it's so seamless how well it works. I love it. Oh boy. Oh me, oh my. Oh goodness gracious. What a wonderful life. What do you think of the Dark Sun setting? So, here's what I think of the Dark Sun setting. I think it's baller. So, when it comes to biomes of adventure is what I'll say. Like, when it comes to forest, jungle, Arctic, ocean, tundra, whatever. My favorite is desert. I like deserts. I like the heat. I like the challenge that it can be presented. I like the uniqueness of the environment. I like the struggles that are present. There's so many things about deserts that I really like, both in real world and in, of course, in our games. So Dark Sun, right there, awesome. But also, very importantly, when it comes to Dark Sun setting, is I like the scariness of the magic. I like the grunginess of like the low fantasy vibe of like oh, people are using bone weapons, because people aren't using iron weapons because iron's like super rare, right? And there's these sorcerer kings that control everything, and whenever they cast magic, they like straight up destroy the world. And oh, you got this forest full of cannibals or whatever. I dig that. I like the Dark Sun setting. I think it's metal and all of that, but also the art is freaking great. I freaking like those classic 80s arts of like, muscle bound chicks and dudes like barely wearing anything and they're all fighting, these monsters. Like I that is awesome. I love that stuff. So metal, so classic, so beautiful. I like the Dark Sun setting. Now, ultimately, I think the Dark Sun setting needs to stay where it is because, one, it mechanically is not going to be good in 5e. I personally would never run a Dark Sun setting using 5e. I would never go through the rigmarole to homebrew all of the, oh, hey, like weapons can break and, magic is scary and, so on and so forth. I would never go through the rigmarole of making 5e something it's not. Because, as a reminder, when it came to all those old school settings, whenever you ran one of those old school settings, it was already implied right then and there, oh, hey, you're playing in this setting, okay, you have to adhere to these rules. Versus 5e has not had that mentality of when you play in a new setting, you play under new rules. 5e hasn't had that mentality. So one, I think Dark Sun needs to stay where it is. Two, also there is things that do not sit well with the with today's day and age in regards of what we're looking for. So I like the Dark Sun setting. I think it's dope. I think it's baller. I think it's metal. I think it's just fun. But I think it needs to stay in the OSR. Because I think the OSR makes it stand out better. Any Chapter 2 Icewind Dale quest you think you should definitely be skipped? Let me grab my book real quick. I'm trying to remember them all. Alrighty, grab my book. Let me see. Chapter 2. Going down the list, purely by the contents page here. Here are the ones that I think should definitely be skipped. Cave of the Berserkers, because mechanically it's... Did I... Internet cut out for a second again, but it's all good. Number 2, Carcolok. Carcolok, I just don't think is a... I just think that it just doesn't add anything of value or note to the adventure at hand. Like, there's nothing... There's one thing that ties something else, but you don't even need to do that something else, so it's practically irrelevant. 3, Revel's End. I know Revel's End is going to be a bit of a shocker to some people, but I just don't think that like going to a prison's like entertaining. It's like whatever. You just go to a place, you talk to some people, whatever. And then lastly, the 2 Goliath places. Unless you incorporate the Goliaths into the overarching part of the campaign, then involving Sky Tower Shelter or Wormdoom Crag, and like unless they're incorporated, then just pass over it. It doesn't add anything. The other ones at least add like, some foreshadowing, or they add, just a unique environment or unique encounters or whatever. But I think that specifically Cave of the Berserkers, Karkalok, Revel's End, and then the Goliath place is like, eh. Do you run your adventures online or in person? If you run them online, I'd absolutely love to be a part of the next time you run Tomb of Annihilation. I have a flexible schedule and good equipment. I'm wanting to play in more campaigns. I just don't have anyone I know near me who is DM. Absolutely, Josh. So the majority of the games that I run are online. So I will feel free. Yeah, I will absolutely be posting all about that when I start running my next sets. So recently, like in 2022, I ran a bunch of public games. I'll be making more posts about them. I may post about them before, but I'll be making more posts about them next time. I'll be running a bunch of one shots, and I'll be running some, public like kind of West Marches games. I'll be running a bunch of different things, so I'll let you know all about that. It'll be in my Discord. It'll be on the YouTube. It'll be all over. Revel's End being skipped should be the norm. There's literally nothing there. It doesn't even know anything useful. Where do you make your post? I make the post on the Discord and on YouTube. I'm not. I haven't checked my Twitter in literally like months. I stopped caring about Twitter. Could I have a Discord link? Sure. I believe there's a Discord link in the description of this as well, of this like video. But let me just double check here. But I will absolutely. There's also a Discord link in all my YouTube videos. I know that. I have not been like terribly active on my Discord recently because I had a job. I had a seasonal job and I was doing a bunch of things, but I will be much more active this year because I'll be pumping out a bunch more content. I'll be doing a lot more writing gigs. I'll be publishing my adventures. I'm going to be doing a bunch of things for sure. Oh boy. Yeah, so Josh, for my last, I ran a bunch of games. I ran all of the journeys through the Radiant Citadel, and then I ran a bunch of 0th level one-shots, which, if you've never played a 0th level adventure, it's basically, I give you a bunch of peasants, and then you go off on an adventure, and it's all sunshine and rainbows, and nothing bad ever happens ever. So I ran a bunch of those, and that was a great time. I got to run for a bunch of people, and it's fun running for a bunch of people. Like I said, I've ran for, at this point, hundreds of people. I genuinely could not tell you how many people I've ran games for. I have ran for so many different people. And mind you, I've never been to a con either. Like, I know there's a bunch of people who go to cons and run a bunch of games for a bunch of people. I've never been able to do that. Never been to a convention. Sounds pretty fun roleplay wise. It is. So one thing is I really dig about 0th, starting off a campaign at 0th level is as we saw before, there's a bunch of people asking questions about oh, hey, I want to be this class, or I want to have this background, or so and so. But when you run a 0th level adventure to start off a campaign, instead of any of that nuance of whatever, you literally start off the campaign as a bunch of peasants. You go off on whatever adventure, and that is the background. And the great part about that is when you go on to run the rest of the campaign, for the rest of the campaign, instead of people being like, oh, back in my day, this so and so. Instead, it was truly a shared experience. Your background, you were all peasant losers, and you're like, you all came from like rags to riches. You all came up together. Like, that is a fantastic way to incorporate everyone at the table together by saying, hey, like, you all started from nothing together. You all were literally started off this campaign as peasants, and now you all are somebodies. Like, that's awesome. So it's funny, yeah. You mentioned Tomb of Annihilation. So I've already ran Tomb of Annihilation a bunch of times using 5e. The next time I run Tomb of Annihilation, I'm either going to run it using Old School Essentials or Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'm going to be running it using one of those two because I'll be very interested to see how the game shapes up using a different game system. It'll be very interesting to see how we're taking the same adventure, the same dungeons, the same whatevers, but using a different game system is going to actually kind of change up the pace and tempo and feel of the game. It'll be kind of cool. Oh, gosh darn. I love that. Rags to Riches sounds so fun. Also, I'm using your idea for Curse Strahd campaign to have them jump into it absolutely nothing but their clothes. Yes. So every time I run Curse of Strahd, I do Naked and Afraid. Every single time, without a question. Because what ends up happening is if you run 5e purely as written, characters actually start off with a bunch of bullshit. A bunch. Characters have a ton of gear, a ton of items, maybe not necessarily a ton of gold, but they've got a bunch of gold, right? They've got a bunch of things. Like, specifically, if you are let's say a martial class, you already have all of the weapons and armor that you're going to be using for quite some time, maybe even the entirety of the campaign. If you are a caster, you start off with a wand, you're probably going to end off with a wand, you know what I'm saying? So I love the Naked and Afraid approach because, one, that forces the marshals to pick up literally anything that they can get their hands on. And two, that means all of the casters need a scrounge to get a component or whatever to get their spells that have a material component to it. And, like, that's really cool because, specifically in Curse of Strahd, like, if you have several people that are spellcasters, and you don't tell them that you're doing the Naked and Afraid approach, they may have a bunch of spells that say, oh, requires a material component. And if they don't have the material component, then they're like, oh, crap, now, I got to improvise. Like, that's cool. Like, that's a fantastic kickoff to the campaign of literally scrounging for crap. Yeah, they are level 1 weaklings with hundreds of gold worth of stuff. It doesn't make tons of sense. It's funny because, like in the grand context of the game, a 5e level 1 adventurer is substantially better than the commoner, right? Substantially. The commoner has 10s across the board, 4 HP, plus nothing to their attack. Versus you compare that to the 5e adventure, level 1 adventure, they presumably have much more health. They presumably have a bunch of pluses everywhere. They presumably have a plus, like on average, a +4 or +5 to their attack. They have a ton of stuff going for them, right? And, so that shows that a level 1 character is leagues above a peasant. Leagues. And then you start comparing them to other things, like a guard. Like the guard stat block. They are actually substantially much, much better than the guard stat block. Then you start bumping it up just a little bit further and a little bit further, and it's like, okay, they're semi-comparable to a scout. Then then the knight's way better than the whatever's so better. But the adventure is still a heck of a lot better than the commoner. But even still, there needs to be a bridge. You know what I'm saying? I'm okay if they start off with a level 0 and then move on to level 1, because then they've earned it. They've earned all the gold that they have on their person. They've earned all the equipment, right? But when you start off with level 1, it just feels so weird because you have to have a reason for why they have all that bling on them, you know what I'm saying? That's true. I haven't really looked at it that way. Yeah, it's always interesting to think because like what also irks me too is like if you're running a level 1 campaign and you get that person that wants to show up with a 5-page backstory, like it's cool and all that you got the 5-page backstory, but like what, like, you know, like did you really like fight the orc horde as a level 1 person? No. Did you really like take down assassins that were coming for your king, who's who's your dad? You probably didn't as a level 1, right? So you always have to temper the expectations with the reality of the mechanics, right? Which is why if you start off like a campaign as a higher level, then like yeah, then it's okay. Like sure, you took down the assassins if you're like a level 8 fighter. Sure, I'm okay with that. As the level 1, did you? Did you really? I don't know. I don't know about that. I feel like if you have a 5-page backstory, you should be level 10. Exactly, right? Exactly. Exactly. And you know, like I'm like for my core groups that I've had, because mind you, I run both like core groups and I also run like a bunch of like West Marches games and one shots and whatever. For my core group, I haven't had to deal with that too much. I've had like one person though, like definitely wrote like the 5-page backstory, and I was like, oh my god, do I have to read all this? Do I really want to have to read all this? I don't know, but. For the most part, it's been I've been pretty happy to have players that are okay with me saying, "Hey, players, your characters, you know, they have this certain criteria. They're from this certain area. They've done this thing, but you can make the character how you see fit using these parameters." I've been very lucky in that regard. I know that there's a bunch of people that would be like protesting to that. You know, but I'm very much so fortunate that I have players that understand that in order to facilitate a good, you know, a game, then, you know, makes sense for me to tell you, okay, no so-and-sos, you know, no artificers for this campaign, and no, you have to be from this, town to start off this campaign kind of thing. Been very fortunate in that regard. Oh man, I have to hit the gym tomorrow because, or no, I have to hit the gym tonight because tomorrow, I'm for like my gym is kind of, it's so annoying. My gym, it's open from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. during the week, but then on the weekends it's only open from 8 to 5. And my job that I currently have right now is typically from that range of like between either 8 or 9 to like 7 or 8 or whatever. So if I work on the weekends, I can't go to the gym, so I gotta go tonight. Gosh darn it, because I work tomorrow. But I'm still a little sore, so I'll take it easy today. Maybe, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll go in the pool today. Maybe I'll do that. Do some swimming. It sounds like fun. Speaking of swimming, I when I make my next when I make the my version of 1D&D, I'm gonna have a checklist of like things that your character doesn't know, and I promise you, the overwhelming majority of characters don't know how to swim. I can promise you, the overwhelming majority of PCs ever made would realistically not know how to swim, and yeah, just for like convenience sake, in all of our D&D games, like everyone knows how to swim. That is not the case in a medieval world where people grow up presumably miles and miles away from either the ocean or like the river is only so big. A lot of people would not know how to swim. So that'll definitely be one of the things about when you're making a character is, are they left-handed or right-handed? Do they know how to swim? Can they climb rope? Things like that. I love making backstories more simple. I feel super complicated backstories hamper the PC's ability to grow and change. If it's super long and crazy detailed, they'd want to stick to it too much. True. I agree with that. What do I do for work? So right now, I took a seasonal job as I sell men's, or not just men's, but I sell fragrance. So I sell like colognes and perfumes at a Nordstrom's. So that's been a ton of fun because I get to, like when a customer comes in, they're like, oh, hey, like I want to smell like this kind of thing. Can you help me out? And then I get to show them all sorts of different fragrances. Like, oh, do you like more citrusy? Do you like more, do you like more musky? Do you like it heavier? Do you like it lighter? Do you like, so that's been a ton of fun. That was I got to do a seasonal job of that. And, tomorrow is my last day, and then from then on, I will be, for the foreseeable future, I'll be pumping a lot more of my effort back into the YouTube channel and into my freelance writing that I'm doing for others. Ton of fun. Oh, that's sick. I love cologne. Have a decent collection here. Heck yeah. Oh. So yeah, that's been fun. I've gotten to interact with a lot of cool people and gotten to make a lot of people happy and whatnot. I drive for FedEx, hello, but hours are usually short and the money is good, so lots of time for D&D now. Heck yeah. As long as you are making that money and playing that D&D, it's good. Because a lot of times you have to sacrifice one of the two. A lot of times it's like, okay, if I want to make money, I can't. I don't have time for play, or if I play D&D, I don't have any time for money. So it's good that you found the balance between the two. I'll tell you what, though, I have been going for 3 hours and I guess now 13 minutes. So I'll go for another 2 minutes. And so if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, gripes, moans, complaints, then I will answer them. What's your Iro Larthus voice?
Yes, I am undeath. Come, hear me now. Let me rip your souls from your body.
Sounds a little like that.
My empire was great, and you dare to defile it with your filthy footsteps.
Yeah, something like that. It's funny. I do, like, mind you, when I am DMing or GMing or, whatever game system I'm running for, whenever I'm running a game, I do voices. If you talk to a character, you are talking to a voice. You will, and what I really like about that style of what I do is, if you hear my voice, you are hearing the voice of DM, right? Because if you hear a voice, you're talking to that character, right? You hear Iro Larthus talking, you know damn well that's Iro Larthus talking. When you hear the little meatball and it sounds like this and it's being all nice and kind and blah blah blah, when you hear that character, you're talking to that character. But if you hear me, you hear my regular voice, you know that is DM talking, right? It is not, oh, you know, it's not, oh, it's not Billy Jim. No, it is very much like Billy Jim will sound like Billy Jim. So so not only is that very good distinction for my players, so that they never confuse talking to the DM versus talking to the NPC, but also it's also good for me because it gets me in my mindset. You know,
when I talk like this, I feel vengeance. I feel anger.
Versus when I'm normally talking, I don't feel vengeance or anger. You know what I'm saying? So. Sounds good. Thank you so much for the personable answers and fun times. You're a great content creator and person to talk to. I definitely hope I can get into a full campaign with you someday. Absolutely. Details will be coming up. I know I'm going to be running games all about it in the future. You rock, no fun. Have a great night. Thank you. Thank you. So, that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for liking, for commenting, for subscribing, for I got a donation. Thank you. Thank you so very much. But that's going to do it for me. I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.